Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today we are going to make an arm sling. And you're probably wondering, why are we making an arm sling when you can buy them from the store? Well, they're really boring and ugly looking. This one here is just black. Sometimes they're blue and white, and they are not matching George's outfit. So today we are going to make one that matches. We're going to be using this really fun floral fabric. Now you can get crazy with these. You can embroider them, you can embellish them, really show off that arm sling and make it match your outfit. Have a little fun with it. And don't worry, this project is super easy to sew up, and you can even do it with a broken arm. Ha ha. Just real quick, if you are looking to learn how to sew even more, make sure you check out my online sewing academy. There's a link down below. Now let's get back to creating that sling. So you're probably wondering, what the heck happened to George? How did he break his arm? Well, we took a holiday. We went to Hawaii. So beautiful there. The weather stunning right now. And we were riding our bikes around because we love riding our bikes around the city here in Chicago. So we wanted to experience that in Hawaii as well. We went on an awesome bike ride up a volcano and down, saw some sheep and cows and all kinds of fun stuff, and gorgeous views of the water. Stunning. Well, we were on our second bike ride and we were going downhill, and George hit that front brake a little too hard and went flying over his handlebars. His face was pretty messed up. One of his hands is still pretty messed up, and we have a broken arm. But don't worry, he's recovering. He's going to be okay. And this has led us to our creative arm sling tutorial. So let's get started. So since we're making this custom for you, let's measure our own arm to make this. So we're going to be measuring from the elbow all the way down to the wrist. And George here's got about 13 and a half. And so that's going to be the length of one side of the rectangle shape that we're creating here. But we also want to add a couple inches to it because we need to account for the fabric that's going to wrap around the back of the arm. So for the measurement for the back of the arm here, it's really hard to measure the back of your arm here. If you can, go ahead, measure that, divide in two, and then add that measurement to the length here. And if you can't measure the back of your arm here, I just want you to add 3 inches to the arm length here. So we had 13, so now we're going to have 16 in length.
We also need to measure the height. This is 7 inches, and we need to double that to go around the arm. So our height is 14 inches total.
So now I have my 2 measurements. I've got 16 in length and I've got 14 in height. Now let's do some chalking out on this really fun fabric. I'm going to be cutting out my lining fabric first. That way I can use this rectangle as a template for my fancy fabric to position that flower beautifully. And I'm also going to be adding seam allowance to this measurement. So add 1 inch in each direction. So I'm going to be making this 17 inches by 15 inches. So we got 17 inches long, and now we're going to go 15 inches in height there. And now I can cut it out. I'm going to cut this out with my scissors. And there we go. Now we have our template here cut out, and this is also going to be our lining fabric. So here's my outside fabric for the arm sling, and I want to position that flower so that way when it's on, it's going to be the main star really showing on the side. So I'm going to take my lining fabric and I'm going to place it on here where I want that floral to be, positioning it roughly where I think it needs to be. And now what we can do is fold this in half and then flip this back so you can double check and see, is that floral or the design that you have going to be in the right spot? And I like where that one's at. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to fold that back out flat, and now we can weight that down and cut out right around the edges. Now I'm cutting out my self fabric here for the outside of the arm sling. It's going to be so cute. Here we go. Now I have both big rectangles cut out for my arm sling. For our strap, you're going to need a piece of fabric that's 3.5 inches wide and at least 40 inches long, and we'll adjust the perfect fit for it later on. So right now, I'm just going to be ripping a piece off the side of my fabric that's 3.5 inches wide. So I'm going to snip in at 3.5 inches. I usually snip down about 1 inch, and then we're just going to pull. It's really gratifying. It's really loud too. You're probably wondering, why are you ripping it? Well, the fabric I'm using is a plain weave, and when you rip a plain weave, it rips perfectly on the grain. So here we have a perfect long rectangle that's a strip. Now, sometimes if you're chalking these out, they can get off grain a little bit, and then it can make it harder to sew. So it's actually more accurate to rip it. Now it's time to do some sewing. So we're going to sew these big rectangles together. So place them right sides together. And now when we sew these, we want to leave one side open. We're going to leave one of these short sides open, so don't sew that together. But we're going to sew the long sides, and then we're going to sew one of the short sides. So we're sewing 3 sides of this rectangle. And then while we're over at the sewing machine, we want to sew our strap together. So we're going to take this strap and we are going to fold it right sides together. And we're going to sew up the side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we'll meet you back over here at the table. So let's go do some sewing and dream of Hawaii. So the seam allowance on the rectangle is a 1/2 inch because we left that extra inch when we were measuring it out. When you get to your corner, make sure you leave your needle in, lift your foot up, and turn your project and reposition. Stop a 1/2 inch away from the other side, needle in, foot up, and turn. Now that we're done with the big rectangle, I'm going to set this to the side and I'm going to grab my strap. And again, the seam allowance on the strap is a 1/4 inch and we're going to be sewing it right sides together. When you get to the end, back stitch, and now we're done sewing the strap. So now you should have that rectangle sewn up and that tube. Before we flip our rectangle right side out, we need to clip off the corner. So we are literally cutting off the corner. This is going to reduce the bulk when we flip this right side out. You're going to do that to both corners. Now we're going to take this and we're just going to flip it right side out. And make sure you're pushing those corners out so they look nice and crisp. And if you have an iron, I want you to iron this. Take the seam, roll it in your fingers, get that seam to pop out to the top, and give it a nice press. We only have a few steps left until we have a fancy arm sling for George. So now what we need to do is turn this tube right side out. Now one of the easiest ways to do this with something you totally have laying around the house is with a safety pin. So open up your safety pin and you're going to put the pointy pin through one side of the tube here. Make sure you're not going through both sides and make sure the head of the pin is on the outside. And then go ahead and close your safety pin and take the head of the pin and dive it into the tube. And now what you're going to do is push the back of the safety pin with your thumb. Use your other hand to scrunch up the fabric on the safety pin and then pull some of the fabric off the end and it's going to start to go into the tube. Getting it started sometimes, especially if you have a little bit of a thicker fabric, can be a little tricky, but all you're going to do is push it in and then pull it off. So go ahead, push, 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 scrunch it up, and then pull that top layer down. And then before you know it, you'll be all the way at the other end. Now when you get the safety pin to the other end, just go ahead and keep pulling. Pull all the scrunch down, and then this is going to turn your tube right side out. And there we go. Our tube is right side out. You're also going to want to iron your tube. So just go ahead, again, roll that seam, pop it out to the side, and then give it a nice press. Now that my rectangle is nice and ironed, we're going to take it, fold it right sides together. We're going to line up the top edges here. So now what we're going to do is draw a nice little curve here at the back of the arm for the elbow. First thing I want you to do is draw in your 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to take a French curve. You could use a plate, a cup, or freehand this. And we're going to blend from that 1/2 inch down to the bottom here, making a nice curve. So you can see my elbow is going to be here. So we're going to get rid of all of this extra fabric there. So now I'm just going to sew from the top all the way down to the bottom here. So I have that line sewn, and now what we're going to do is cut off some of the excess. So leave a seam allowance, but we don't need that giant chunk of fabric in there. So I have that cut off, and now you can finish the edge here, zigzag or overcast or serge it. Our strap, though, is going to be covering some of that, so that's totally up to you. Our fancy sling is looking so good. We only have a few more steps left. Now we're moving on to the strap, and the first thing I want you to do is cut off 6 inches of your strap. Now we're going to take the 6-inch strap piece and we're going to attach it to the front opening of the sling. So you can get a cast or your jacket or something comfortably into the sling, so that way it's not too tight on your arm at the opening. To do this, we're going to come down about a 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric there, and we're going to place that raw edge of the strapping. And then we're going to fold it back, leave about a 1/4 inch in there, and flip it up. Go ahead and pin this down so it doesn't move on you. And you can see from the outside, it's going to look nice and clean and finished, and from the inside, it is as well. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So just flip it up a 1/4 inch and then place it a 1/4 inch below the edge there. So this little strap is holding together the sides of the sling. So we're going to be adding a little edge stitch at the top here, so a stitch really close to the edge, and then you're going to flip it back and add a stitch really close to the fold of the strap right here. And this is going to secure that piece and keep it nice and strong. And we're going to do the exact same thing to both sides here. First, I'm adding the little edge stitch to the outside. Now I'm going to flip it over. See how nice that looks? Now we're going to add it to the bottom of the strap here. Let's fold it up. And don't forget to add all those back stitches to make it nice and strong. And now you can cut your threads. Now that we have that little front bridge, if you will, sewn on, we are going to attach the rest of the strap. So the first thing we're going to do is take the strap, we're going to cover that seam back there, and we're going to sew that on. And then you get to try it on and adjust it to be the perfect length, and then we'll do our last sewing step. So we're going to take that back curved seam, we're going to iron it open. Now you can zigzag or overcast that if you want, but the strap's going to cover most of it. And I'm going to be using the end that has the selvage, so I don't have to worry about any raw edges. And I'm not going to go all the way down to the curve because it's going to be really hard to sew, but I'm going to go down about 4 or 5 inches, and then we're going to place it right over that seam. We're going to pin that down, and then we're going to sew on this side edge stitch and on that side. And that's going to add some really strength and durability to holding up the arm. So you can see I have that strap sewn down on the sides, and I sewed it across the top. Now it's time to try it on and adjust that strap. So we're going to slip it on the front of the arm, fit it comfortably there, wrap it over your other shoulder. And now right here where we have this loop, we want this to wrap under. And I want you to figure out right where you want the height of it. So George is going to figure out how high or long he wants this, where it feels comfortable. Probably there, okay. I'm just going to safety pin this right now. Now I'm going to be sewing this down, but you can also just take it and tie it in a knot, and that will allow you to adjust it, maybe if you're wearing a bigger jacket or something. But we know this is right where we want it, so I'm going to show you how to finish it and sew it down. So now we need to get rid of some of the excess. So I'm going to cut just right beyond the safety pin. I'm going to make sure I'm just cutting off the tail there. And now when I sew this, I want it to look nice and clean. So I'm going to make sure that the seam we create is on the bottom side. So I'm going to remove the safety pin. And I'm going to fold back this edge here. And so we can also just take it and just sew it down right there. Just go ahead and sew it down if that makes more sense to you. If we want to keep it a little cleaner though, we want it to be folding under where this edge is here. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and mark this with some chalk on both sides. Okay. And now I know we're going to take it and I'm going to fold it back. And that's way longer than that piece. I'm actually going to cut off some more. I only need about a 1/2 inch there. So now what I'm going to do is take this. We're going to fold that back a 1/2 inch. We're going to place it under here in the middle. So it looks nice and clean here from the outside. And from the back side here, we're just going to sew it down right in a rectangle, put a little X through it, really reinforce it. And then this is going to hold up here on the sling, and it's going to give it a really nice complete look. So now we're going to sew right around this little end piece. Make sure your needle's in and your foot's up when you're pivoting. Try and keep everything nice and flat and straight. gonna make an X in it. So I'm gonna come 45-degree angle now through the square here. Maybe I am. Now I'm gonna sew across the top. Come to the other end, and now I'm gonna sew one more 45-degree angle here. Make sure you back stitch and cut. So I had just sewn this down perpendicular to the little strap here, and it just wasn't hanging right when we tried it on. And we found that if we place the strap parallel with this strap here, just right on top of it, that it's going to hang much better. So I'm still going to be folding under that edge, right where I drew that chalk mark. I'm going to be placing it in the middle of the strap, and I'm still going to sew that rectangle. So I'm just going to be sewing the exact same rectangle I just had on there, but now I'm sewing the strap right on top of the other strap that's here. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and then we'll try it on for a final fitting. So I seam ripped it and sewed it on one more time. This time for the final adjustment, I moved the edge all the way down to the bottom of the sling, sewed that on, and then I put a reinforcement stitch at the center of that bridge there. So you can see that I put one more stitch right there, which is holding that nice and strong. So this way it gets a really nice even pull on the arm, and it's nice and strong. George has on his new sling and it matches his shirt so good. It looks so fashionable, wouldn't you say? Now you know how to make a custom sling that fits you great. And you don't have to be left with those really boring medical grade slings, right? We can do floral, we can do polka dots, we can do embroidery, we can do plaid, we can do denim, we can even upcycle other garments into slings. The options are really endless on what you want to make your sling out of and what your personality is. So while you've got to wear it, let your personality shine. And I would love to know, why do you have to wear a sling? Sorry you gotta wear one, but leave your stories down below. I'm sure some of you have some adventurous stories to share. Or maybe you just slipped on the ice, because winter is here, and that does happen. Thank you so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. I hope you found my tutorial helpful on creating a custom sling. If you have any questions, leave it down below in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you enjoyed the video today, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Sew Anastasia if you haven't subscribed yet, and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And let me know what kind of awesome fabric you're going to make your sling out of. Leave it down below in the comments. And let me know what other videos you would like to see this year. Leave that down below in the comments as well. And if you're in Chicago, come on into my design studio and take some sewing classes with me. And if you're not, well, that's okay. We now have online sewing classes, and there are links down below for everything. And if you want to see what's going on in the studio, make sure you follow me on Instagram and really check out those stories, because I'm always posting what's going on in the studio, even what Iris is up to. Thank you so much for watching today. Bye! Oh, that was perfect, Iris. Only if you were over here.